Okay, all right. Good morning. Good morning, folks. Welcome to the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here at AM 830 WCRN, our affiliates as well. Don't forget that we are live streaming on the TuneIn app. That's right, just punch in WCRN and you can take us anywhere. You can also tell Alexa, hey, Alexa, play WCRN, and she'll do that. No questions asked. Pretty cool. As AIs, that's to take over the world. We're also live streaming on our Facebook page. That's a Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. Matter of fact, folks, that's the handle for all of our social media platforms, Joe Mangi Show. All right, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Parler, and Rumble. Parler, yes, back up. Not totally. We can talk about that a little bit, but I guess the iPhone, you still can't get it through Apple and iPhone, and they're still holding their grudge. But what Parler did is they went out and they stacked other service and other companies, and they had to go out of country to do it. Long story, but to some degree they're back up and running. So we'll see where that ends up taking them. So 508-871-7000 to join the conversation, although I'm broadcasting from a secure, non-disclosed location this morning. Everything stays the same. Phone number is the same, 508-871-7000. Our text line is also up and running. It's very easy to text us at 617-297-8388. Text us just like you would text anyone. Text your buddy to go grab a beer or a bite to eat. Same principle. Just text it. Use the number 617-297-8388. By the way, there's a backup on that if you don't have the ability to text, but you can email. You can email me at, get this, it's very clever, text Joe on the radio at gmail.com. Exactly what you're doing. Text Joe on the radio at gmail.com. It appears on the same screen in real time. By the way, you can reach the show off air. And actually, I've been getting a lot of contact through the website at TJMShow.com. There's a contact option on there, and people who have found the show or what have you tend to communicate that way, and that's fine. It forwards it right to our email address, which is JoeMShow at gmail.com. Real simple, JoeMShow at gmail.com, all one word. For instance, George, welcome to the show. I got a message yesterday via the contact tab on our website. Shrewsbury area, just discovered the show. Fantastic. A big listener to the North Star Music at Night. Just found the show. I hope I'm beating out Breakfast with the Beatles today. Apparently that's a competition at this time slot. You know, we are an early morning weekend-based show. And I do want to say that I appreciate the fact that as the years have gone by and more people have found the show, and our listenership has grown early on weekend mornings. I mean, the benefit for you guys, you can actually turn the radio on or set your alarm to the radio and stay in bed. Stay in bed and listen to the show. But I appreciate the fact that many people purposely listen early on the weekend mornings where they don't have to. I mean, it could be a sleep-in day for them. And I do appreciate that. And I want to let you know that. And we have discovered more and more listeners, or I should say more and more listeners have discovered that we're here week in, week out, and they've been joining us, and I want to say thank you to them. Because, you know, this show actually, well, it started, I mean, we're in our 14th year, but it was Mike Wade who, before Obama was even a president, wanted to give the opportunity for people to express their opinion, to get things off their chest. And Mike reached out to me back then to say, hey, I know nothing about radio. So I need somebody to teach me how to do the radio and set everything up and produce this whole thing for me. And I was happy to join him and create, initially Conservatively Speaking. And I actually think the name came from, and you probably remember guy that's been on the air a ton of times here at the station, John Weston, I think was the one who decided or came up with the name Conservatively Speaking, which we went by for a long time. And Mike, God bless him, he burdened the expense of this show for many years. It was all Mike, and he did it, and then he retired and passed the torch, kind of, in the sense that I assumed the financial responsibility of the show to keep it going forward, and we do this because we believe that we'll make a change, that there'll be a difference, some kind of difference, as little as it might be, that we will offer some solutions and some change, an opportunity for change by keeping the show on the air, keeping this microphone open to you, and giving you the ability to express your opinion. It's funny, I keep saying that term, I actually used to host a show called Express Your Opinion at the Marlboro station a couple decades ago. And that was actually a noontime show. I was the news guy there, morning news anchor, news director, but at noon we do a show called Express Your Opinion. But it's in essence the same. This is what the show is here for. So I want to just say, to everybody that keeps writing in, communicates through our text line or messages or the contact tab on the website, thank you, and thank you for listening, and thank you for being there, and thank you for sponsors. I mean, sometimes it's a hard thing for a sponsor to associate with a show that some consider controversial. I don't at all. And one thing, and I'm not going to I talked about Rush Limbaugh yesterday. I'm not going to do that every day, but one of the lessons that he taught us in radio is not to waver, and to be yourself, and to stand your ground. And if you believe in those conservative principles, then say so. And he said it best, that conservatives come from the angle that we see people. We don't see groups of people by label, right? We don't see victims, and we don't see minorities, and we don't see classes. We just see people, which means in everybody, a conservative sees opportunity and potential, and that's a difference. And we also think that since that's what we're seeing and that's what we want for everybody, that the other side wants the same thing, believes in the same thing. But as his PhD in liberalism taught us, but that's not how we're seen. Because if you don't agree with the other side, then you're deplorable. And you're, redneck, right? Flyover country, clinging to our guns and driving our pickups and all of that. And then we're evil. And when you feel that something or someone is evil, then there's no rules in defeating them, correct? And we saw this with Trump. Trump was so evil and so bad. He was a Nazi. Straight up, they told us this. He was a racist, a bigot, a Nazi, a white supremacist. He was all these things, which every one of them is equated to evil, which means that there is no rule or step that can go too far to defeat evil. Because evil should be defeated. And whatever it takes to do so is what we need to do. You don't believe me? You don't believe me. Let me show you something. Because we saw them impeach this man twice in 4 years in his presidency, and the equivalent of acquitted both times. And I got to be honest with you, the second time around, the impeachment, I didn't pay attention to it. They're impeaching Trump. Oh yeah. Oh, they're impeaching Trump again. You know, or at least you have a confidence that it's not going to be successful, but not just because they don't have the votes, because if you actually get down to the evidence, you have none of the high crimes and misdemeanors that they think he has committed. If you look at how the House did it on impeachment 2.0, there was no evidence and no trials, none of the normalcy that would happen in that. And I've been around courthouses a long time. Most of you know, I'm the radio detective. I've been second generation private investigator. I've been deputy sheriff. I've been in courtrooms more times than most people ever are, with the exception of lawyers and judges and things of that nature. It's just the nature of the industry. And when you have no questions for the witness, or you don't call anything, it's because you don't have anything. Or the other part of why you don't call it is you don't want the cross. You don't want to open the door to anything. That's usually what it is. And for those of you who may be watching our live streaming on Facebook, you'll see I am drinking out of my Donald Trump 45th presidential coffee mug that came from the Trump store people. But they, again, decided that he was so evil that it was okay to do anything, use any means, because there's no rules. Think about it, right? If you're defeating Hitler, do you have any moral issues with using any forms, right? The old time travel question that we ask, if you could travel back in time, would you go back and kill Hitler before he did the horrific things he was responsible for? In other words, would you kill baby Hitler in the crib? It's a baby. Yeah, but it's Hitler. And people would say perfectly justified. So how bad is it that they wanted to ruin this man as president? Well, they want to continue to ruin him after he's president. In life and death. Life and death? Yeah, life and death. There's a bill, they dubbed it the No Glory for Hate Act. I think it's H.R. 484. And Democrats in the House have introduced legislation that would prevent President Trump from having his name displayed on federal projects, buildings, statues, lands, or any type of commemoration. So what they're saying is no library. And there's already been those who have threatened any construction company, architecture, or anybody that would do anything to build a Trump library. They're going to do what they do, cancel you. They're going to harass you on social media. They're going to threaten you. Any employee who works, they're going to try to ruin your employment career or prospective employment career. They've already said that. So this bill would prevent a President Donald Trump library. And it was introduced by California Democrat Linda Sanchez. She has 13 co-sponsors, all of who are Democrat. And it specifically prevents federal funds from being used to create or display any symbol, monument, or statue commemorating any former president that has been twice impeached for the House of Representatives. So see, now they put the twice in, so they take Bill Clinton out of there. If they said impeached, well, that means Bill Clinton could be, when the Republicans have control of the House, they can just, well, no, they wouldn't even have to get control, right? If this was to pass and they only had one impeachment as president, Bill Clinton, all that would go, I don't know how they do that retroactively, but it would go to Bill Clinton. So the bill says, and it prevents federal funds from being used to create or display any symbol, monument, or statue commemorating any former president that has been twice impeached by the House of Representatives, including any highways, park or subway, federal building, military installation, street, any other federal property. You could even have a latrine named after him. You couldn't have the Trump latrine at some bivouac. Now, the bill also prevents Donald Trump from being buried at Arlington National Cemetery. So that's why I say, in life and death, they want to reach into the grave and remove the honor that all presidents and military personnel are awarded, are given, and that is the option of being buried at Arlington National Cemetery as a former president. But do you get a little concerned how far that might go? Because they're coming after those of you that voted for him. So first they're going to go after the ones who, right, they started with, if they were in the Trump cabinet, or even if they ran an agency under the Trump administrations, as if they expected people who have their government jobs, they're going through their career, Trump happens to become president, and you're supposed to resign your job because he's the sitting president. I don't know where they're coming from that. You tell me on that. But that's what they're doing, right? They're going to make the lists. They want to make the list of anybody who supported Trump. Well, if you voted for him, you supported him, did you? So you're going to be on that list. They're just going to keep expanding it and expanding it and expanding it. So now what happens if you or your child who served in the armed forces, and God forbid, something happens, and you go to lay them at rest at Arlington National Cemetery, but the clerk at the clipboard he said, oh no, yeah, your son or your daughter is on the list. On the list, yeah. We assume they voted for Trump, but they attended a rally, a mega rally back in 2016. Or they bought a Trump bumper sticker or a T-shirt or a mega hat. They supported Trump. So they can't be buried at Arlington National Cemetery, by the way. Can happen. The Secretary of Defense shall not approve or to determine of eligibility for internment in Arlington National Cemetery made by the Secretary of the Army that permits the internment or interment of Arlington National Cemetery of any former president that has been twice impeached by the House of Representatives. The bill states. So obviously, folks, they've customized this bill, which in itself is a practice that's frowned upon, that's not done. We don't retroactively write bills. And we shouldn't be writing bills to target an individual. I mean, we don't do that to target like a segment of the population or a certain group, but to actually write legislation to tailor and target an individual is beyond acceptable. In addition, the bill states that twice impeached presidents are not entitled to receive any benefit other than Secret Service protection under such the act. And I think they pulled, and this is what they would pull the Secret Service part of it out, because they know they would probably lose some support there, because let's face it, out of living presidents, what bad actors in other countries, which president would they most probably take a shot at? The one that did the most for America. The one that put the bad actors in line. So they pull that part of it out, the Secret Service part, because that might go too far. But he can't have a library, he can't have anything named after him, he can't be buried at Arlington National Cemetery, right? We'll do all that stuff. will do everything to make him a non-president in his afterlife of presidency. No federal funds or other federal financial assistance may be provided to a state, political subdivision thereof, or entity if any such funds or financial assistance will be used for the benefit of any building, land, structure, installation, or any other property that bears the name, or is named or designated in commemoration of any former president, you know it folks, say it together, that has been twice impeached by the House of Representatives. So now, am I giving them too much credit that they shammed the second one through, knowing it wasn't going to pass or anything, just so there were two impeachments, both failed, both exonerated, so that they could write the legislation protecting Bill Clinton by doing the twice impeachment? Am I giving them too much credit for that? What say you? Sanchez recalled the events that unfolded inside the Capitol on January 6th. So she goes into the dramatics of it. But there you go. House Democrats introduce a No Glory for Hate Act to prevent Trump's name from being displayed on any figure. You know, because it's not like Trump has ever been on a building before. It's one of the things he has in line with Washington. His name on a lot of buildings. By the way, the Trump in Atlantic City, right? They took the Trump Tower, the Trump casino building down. Not because it was Trump, it was just scheduled to come down. They imploded the building like they do when they get rid of a building, declare it to build something else. But there were a lot of people who were taking a lot of pleasure in that. All right, folks, Joe Mangiacotti Show, Sunday edition. Our lines are open and available at 508-871-7000. It's 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. And you can reach us off air at JoeMShow@gmail.com, as well as give us a call at 508-603-9778. I just also wanted to mention that that horrific or terrifying, I should say, airplane incident with the 777 leaving Colorado to head to Honolulu yesterday, flight 328, when the cowling came off the engine and the engine caught fire, and those are designed, by the way, right, if there's something wrong with the engine, those pieces are supposed to blow off and separate to get out of the way. And that's what happened. Engine catches on fire. 421 people or something like that on the plane. Pilot. Cowling goes up. The cowling comes off, which is just the housing in the front. Pieces of it go flying. They follow the procedures. They shut it. They weren't that high up. They only had traveled a couple thousand feet up, and they were just out of the airport. They weren't at 30,000 feet or anything. But often, if that's the case, you're better off at a height. You have more time to negotiate and make your glide path and come in. But they were able to do a U-turn in the air type of thing. But they did fly around for a while. And I don't know. I haven't been able to read an article on the whole story yet, but that tells me maybe that they didn't have the ability to dump the fuel, so they ate some of it up. But they landed, and it's miraculous that no one was hurt, on the airplane, but on the ground, with debris falling from a huge airliner. The cowling, this big circle part of the engine, landed in somebody's front yard, and other parts dropped in yards and parks outside of Boulder, Colorado. But nobody got hurt, so good for that. It was just a great miracle. I mean, nobody gets hurt. That's just something. You gotta wonder, man. You gotta wonder. All right. we're going to take a break in a couple minutes, but so I don't want to get too far into starting something, but I do want to touch again on this. I touched on a little bit yesterday, the whole situation with the school teachers and going back to school, and then you got this board out, California. So the whole board's resigned now. Right? The whole board has decided the entire California school board are out after disparaging parents on an accidental Zoom broadcast. And I'm not sure if it was Zoom still, but maybe it was Zoom. But right away, right, you gotta you gotta think about this for a second. If your teacher at this point, after a year of Zoom meetings and conducting all kinds of business over Zoom, that you don't know how it works yet, and you don't understand the concept of open mics and cameras, do you want them actually teaching your kids if they're not that bright? I mean, I know that's a horrible thing to say, but you have to think about that for a moment, right? But all members of the Northern California School Board have resigned after the leaders were caught making disparaging remarks about district parents during a Zoom meeting that was accidentally broadcast to the public. They want to pick up on this because they want, this is some of the comments, right, that you get a look into how these teachers are thinking. They want to pick on us because they want their babysitters back. Now that was from the president, Lisa Barzandine, because they want their babysitters back. You know, out of all of the comments that were made, and there were a lot of discussion made from parents who just getting high and they want to get high alone, to all kinds of comments about them. That's one of the most offensive ones to me that I find offensive, because if you're the president of the school board and you think of yourself as the babysitter, then you are extremely overpaid. Extremely overpaid. If that's what you think your role is. And if that's what you think the parents think of you and look at you as, lady, you have a much bigger problem on your hands. But my point was teachers unions, and the money and the circle of it. But we have to take a break here at the bottom of the hour during the Joe Mangiacotti, hour one of the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. So stick with us. Our lines are open and available. Join the conversation, 508-871-7000. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. All right, folks, welcome back to the second half of the first hour of the Joe Mangiacotti Show, Sunday edition here on AM 830 WCRN, our flagship station, our affiliates, as well as live streaming on TuneIn. And don't forget, you can tell Alexa to play WCRN. She'll do that. No questions asked. We're also live streaming on our Facebook page at Joe Mangi Show. M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. That's our handle on all our social media platforms, so I encourage you to follow us there. Thank you for all the messages and emails that we do get. A lot of you do use the messenger on the Facebook, which is fine. It lets you actually send attachments and photos and stuff, so it works out very well for you. 508-871-7000, lines are open and available. 508-871-7000. Yes, to one of our emailers coming in, hey, let's face it, Democrats and Bushocrats use any excuse to discriminate. Conservatives are real people. Trump is a real person. I should say this is people, but person, and will be remembered. Sign or no sign. So, yes, what say you? First of all, do you think H.R. 484, No Glory for Hate, a bill specifically written to stick it to Donald J. Trump, is going to pass? Are there that many depraved members of the House that would do that? And hopefully there isn't any Republican that would cross the aisle on this one. But you have to think that not every Democrat is so petty and vindictive and clueless in Congress that bill would go anywhere. And I'm not saying, and I brought it up to show you what's happening, not because I thought it would pass. I don't think it would pass. I hope that it wouldn't pass. But going back to the teachers' unions, folks. And before we actually start talking about it, I made a comment yesterday about some of these teachers' unions, right? And you have to, and I encourage you to go Google and look up some of these stories. I mean, Washington, D.C., Barbara Bullock, right, took millions of dollars embezzled from the union. She got 9 years and 2 months. She was sentenced. Down in Dade County, another teachers union embezzlement for $650,000. She got 3 years. San Francisco, former Kenneth Morris, former union official. He was the treasurer, right? He embezzled not a great deal of money. $31,611. You know, if you listen, you know, look, I grew up the son of a police officer. I was around it my entire life. I saw my father being a police detective, working cases. I remember sitting at the kitchen table as a kid going through the printouts of registry motor vehicles, looking for plate numbers that matched the partial plate he had. Things like that, even as a little kid. And one of the things that always stuck with me was sometimes just the stupidity of the criminals would dumbfound my father. And as I grew up and became a detective, I would also be amazed. And if you're going to actually be a criminal, right, if you're going to be a thief, aren't you going to make it worth your while? Are you going to sacrifice years of your life in prison for 31 grand? Oh, I'm sorry, 31,611. How stupid are you? My father said, if you're going to steal, it better be enough to get to a non-extradition island somewhere, right? Well, Kenneth Morris, another brilliant one, has 5 counts of bank fraud, 3 counts of theft of union assets. This is a guy who deposited checks for the teachers union into his own personal account. There's where you're getting the bank fraud. I mean, just, it's loaded with stories. So in the big picture of things, I get it. Teachers, for the most part, are wonderful people who are there for the right reasons. But what we're seeing unfolding right now, and you have to ask, what is going on, folks? The CDC has said that it is okay for us to go back to school. Right? Go back to school. Follow the science. And we've been lectured on this, folks, right? Follow the science. Joe Biden has told us he's going to follow the science. Base his decisions on experts in the science. That's what he's going to do. He said, follow the science. Well, the science says it's okay to go back to school. That transmission of the virus from young school-age children to adults is virtually non-existent. And for the most part, these same teachers that say, no, we won't go back to the classroom, are they shut into their homes, in their condos, in their apartments? Have they gone to the grocery store, the pharmacy, the bank, a friend's house? Have they gone out to eat? Did they celebrate Christmas with more than just the people who live in their house? Did they do any of these things? So it comes to a point where you start to wonder the motivation for not wanting to go back to the classroom. I have maintained for a long time, and I still maintain it, that the cost to our children is now far greater than the virus could be doing to the school situation, at least. The childhood depression is through the roof. Attempted suicide and suicides, drug use, isolation, and then you add on top of all of that they're falling back academically. I've seen it. My nieces who have small children, school-age children, they're not getting the full impact of going to school, including the socialization that is a big part of the school experience. We all think back, right? I mean, some of us might still be friends with our friends from elementary school. You never know. I mean, the thing is, if you had that kind of situation where you're born in that town, grew up, and I mean, I grew up in Natick. I still actually talk to people I was at elementary school and middle school and high school with. At least on a casual basis, oh yeah, that one became a firefighter, that one became a cop, that's an electrician, you know what they do. Some of them reached out to me over the years because all of a sudden they heard me on the radio, and they're like, is that the same Joe that grew up in Natick? So there's the socialization in where you learn to be outside of your house, right? I mean, there's your life in your home with your parents, siblings, or whatever your family structure is. And then there's that skill set that we develop and learn out in the world. And that begins at school. So we're going to have an entire class in this year that has set them back is going to ripple through the entire rest of the academic career. Where they've fallen behind in actual knowledge, in learning, as well as the other skills that we learn through going to school and interacting with people, it's all going to be retarded going forward. And they're going to have to deal with that as a real thing. And yet we have schools who are in session. West Virginia, and I was talking about this on another show I do, and the reason this had come up is because West Virginia said, we can't seem to get stuff together, so what we're going to do is we're going to give you the parents, a $4,600 voucher to either homeschool or send your child to a private school, charter school, situation like that. Now, in West Virginia, there are 17 private schools. 16 of them are Christian. So that's a big boom for the Catholic schools out there, by the way. And a lot of people, they don't have the homeschool ability. When you think about that, folks, the homeschool ability, right? Not every parent, they could be wonderful parents. I mean, just great parents, right? They love their children. They make their children feel loved. They make great dinners and playtimes, and they have family vacations. They're just wonderful parents. But that doesn't always mean that they're going to be wonderful teachers. That doesn't automatically translate to being able to academically satisfy your child's thirst and need. So that isn't always the option. And then if those parents are lucky enough to be in a situation where they have a place to go to work or a job to do, even if it's from home, on a dining room table or the spare bedroom or over the garage or whatever it is, now they have to take time off of work to be the homeschooling parent. See what I'm saying? So it's not always going to be an option for homeschooling. So they have other options. So that's why a lot of Catholic schools are doing very well. So in West Virginia, they said, well, this is what we're going to do now. Remember, they're very Republican controlled. Right? They have 100 reps, and I think it's 76 of them are Republican in 24 out of 35 state senators, and a Republican governor in West Virginia. And they said, so we'll give $4,600 voucher, go off to school. But they also, in that bill, when they did that, and this is why this had come up in a different discussion, is they specifically denoted that the school that you chose to go to did not have to change any of their curriculum or teachings or stance on anything, meaning that they could still, in essence, practice discrimination. Discrimination that's not allowed under Title IX, right? Not allowed in public school systems to discriminate based on race or gender or sexual preference or any of that. So that was the debate. Well, wait a minute, isn't a voucher more or less tax money? But of course, the counter to that is they pay their taxes. It's their money that they're giving to the school to educate their children, and you're just giving me a voucher back for my own money. So that's a whole debate. What say you in that? I didn't bring this story up for that aspect of this debate, but I'm love to hear what you think of that, whether or not that carries through, and that that voucher should not be used in any of those 16 out of the 17 private schools in West Virginia. But the reason I'm saying is they came up with this idea. We can't get it together for some reason, right? The unions and so forth won't let us open up the doors. So we'll give a voucher and parents can get their kids to school, meaning that there are schools to go to. And the science supports that it's okay, and we don't have this rash of infection of students or teachers. So it can be done. So why aren't schools open in the entire country, across the nation? And let's look at the money. $128 billion allocated to opening schools, and they've used 6 of it. I think it's 127 because it's it's $121 billion. Billion, people. Real money. I know $120 million these days doesn't really raise the eyebrows like it used to, right? 121 billion with a B dollars still yet to be used. So I ask, where is that money? And honestly, you have to wonder, with stories like the 650,000 in Dade County, right? The 2.5 million in Washington D.C., even the 31,611 from the Jamoke in San Francisco. But there are stories after stories. I'm telling you, go do some surfing and find the stories. And you're going to think to yourself, at some point, trust me, I'm guaranteeing you, at some point, if you go down that rabbit hole for an evening, at some point you're going to go, wait a minute, how do we not know this? How come this isn't as well known? That so many teachers union officials have embezzled money, misappropriated funds, used it for vacations and even to buy cars and property. How is this not a bigger story? You will ask yourself that question at some point if you do that. So I cannot help but wonder right now, before we put one more dime out there for school opening, that we have an accounting of not just the billions already spent, but where the $121 billion that was allocated is sitting and what is it being used for. Matter of fact, wouldn't you like the interest on $121 billion? Forget stealing, embezzling, any part of that principle, right? Leave it alone. Give me $121 billion for 6 months, and I could live off of that interest. That alone I would be happy with. So you're going to ask, where is that $121 billion and where is it going to go? You cannot expect me to believe that it's going to take $121 billion in plexiglass and sanitizer. Because if that's what you're willing to pay, give me that contract. I will plexiglass and have sanitation stations at every doorway to every classroom, at every school in the country for $121 billion. No problem. I'll take that contract. So we need to ask, what is going on here? And we've talked about it. I've talked about the cycle that goes on. Now yesterday, if you caught it, great. If you didn't, I had Mark Mix, and we talked about a very important SCOTUS ruling from 2018 that said that unions can't extract money from you. They can't force you to pay union dues, which the teachers' unions have done for generations. But they do take the union dues and they use that for political clout and power by donating it to candidates, typically Democratic candidates, yes. And they use that power and influence lobbying, and part of that lobbying is to get federal money, i.e. your tax money, thrown into the school system. And yeah, the part of the purpose of a teachers' union is to further the profession of teachers, secure them. But remember, the students don't pay union fees, right? The teachers are paying the fees. So the union's fiduciary responsibility are to the teachers, not your children, and not you. You as a parent don't pay the teachers' union fees. Your child doesn't pay the teachers' union fees. Only the teachers do. So the fiduciary, by law, the responsibility and dedication is to the teachers. But that's the circle, folks. Extract the fees, use them to influence politicians, donate to candidacies, and then have them pay those endorsements and those donations back by pumping taxpayer dollar back into the school systems, where apparently the bookkeeping isn't that fastidious, because there's embezzlement and missing money all across the counties of this great country. From Dade County to Washington State to Washington, D.C. to Chicago. Yeah, there's somebody, we had a teachers union president under house arrest for embezzlement while still performing duties. I mean, it is beyond ridiculous. And it seems like teachers have always been that third rail too. You know, you're not allowed to ask these questions because they're teachers. It's for the children. They're for the children. And to those teachers who teach for the right reason, who are in this for the right reason, God bless you. But to the teachers who say things like they want to pick on us because they want their babysitters back and come after me and I'll destroy you, and they want their kids back in school just so they can get high in private, those are the quotes from the open meeting on that Zoom in the North California board. Actual teachers saying this stuff. The Oakley Union School District. It's east of San Francisco. They serve about 5,000 students. So, we're not supposed to ever question teachers. But enough is enough. We need to. I'm sorry, folks. We have to question where the money's going, where it has been spent, because it's not like we don't know that it's so tempting when there's this much money floating around to misappropriate some funds, to deposit union checks meant for the union account into your own personal account, things like that. We have just example after example of this. So I think it's time that we seriously ask why. You know something, remember in Reagan years, right? Ronald Reagan did something that nobody even saw coming. They didn't even have time to think that would he ever do this. But it was firing the air traffic controllers, and that was a huge thing, because no one ever thought, and it really helped lead to the end of the Cold War. But I think, Cam, we're coming up to a break we're going to need. I don't know how far are we away from that. Cam, do we have to break, or how much time do we have? I haven't heard him. Well, all right, we do have one. So real quick, he fired the air traffic controllers, and later on we found out through KGB files and interviews after the wall came down that is what actually made the old Soviet Union come to the table, because they said a man who would fire the air traffic controllers, a country which operates on its air travel, we have no idea what he would do. So we better go to the table and talk to him. So it was a big cog in the whole Cold War, in bringing the Cold War to an end. But I think we're getting to the point where we have to do that with the teachers. It's time to go back to school. You have the option. You go back to school, you move on. There are plenty of people willing to take your job. Because it's not about the kids, guys. We know it. It's not about the children. It's not about the safety. It's about other stuff. When they're making demands about defunding the police, removing the resource officer, political stuff that has nothing to do with the classroom and nothing to do with teaching your child and giving your child an education they're supposed to be getting, it's not about their safety anymore. It's about money and power. It's always about money and power. All right, folks. Hour one of the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show down. So stick with us. Come back on the other side. 508-871-7000. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. Oh, no, no, no. I'm sorry. I said that he was ended up going on yesterday. Nope. I'm just gonna. No, no. Forget. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Yeah, we're not doing Mark. I'm sorry. He got switched to. You should have been on an email chain. He was on yesterday. So we have no guest today, okay? All right, thanks. And what time do you have? Because let's see if I'm connected here. All right. All right, folks. All right, folks. Okay, welcome back. Welcome back to the second hour of the Joe Mangiacotti Show in the Sunday edition here on AM 830 WCRN, affiliate stations, of course, broadcasting throughout New England. You can also listen to us on the TuneIn app. Just punch in WCRN. You can take us anywhere. We're also on Alexa. Isn't that great? If you have Alexa, if you don't mind having big tech in your house, and you've got Alexa there, you just say, hey, Alexa, play WCRN. She'll do that, no problem, no questions asked. We're also live streaming on our Facebook page at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. You can reach the show off air at JoeMShow at gmail.com. And you can text us in real time during the show at 617-297-8388. 617-297-8388. And it appears on the screen here. We have a few texts coming in. One question, whatever happened to, oh, okay. Um, we have an inquiry about Gene, who's a regular caller to the show. Um, my understanding is after getting the news of illness, she's been with her sister down south. But I don't know that to be guaranteed. That's what's been passed on to me around the station. Um, so as far as I know, she's still at the sister's house. You know what? I will ask around the station. I know I've gotten a couple inquiries about that, and that's interesting. See, it's a family feeling there, right? And often when I get emails and text messages, you, the listeners, are mentioned in them on a regular basis. Sometimes by name, so and so. I like it when they call and what they have to say, or your callers really are great and they know so much. So you get that, and people have heard Gene call my show and other shows here on the station for years, and have come to know her sometimes, as the God Lady, affectionately referred to her as sometimes. But that's what I understand, is that she, a Framingham resident, but she went down south to be at her sister's, dealing with her illness. But I will try to find out more detail on that. All right, then there's some long text here which I can't read live on the air. It has to do with impeachment, so I'll do that in a break and get back to you on that. All right, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation, 508-871-7000. That's how you reach into the studio for two-way talk in conversation. The Lincoln Project. Now, the Lincoln Project, folks, was created after Donald Trump became president, and it was made up of Republicans who were anti-Donald Trump, and they really try to position themselves as above reproach, just that the old school and the way Republicans should be, and that Donald Trump is not representative of the Republican Party, so forth and so on. And oftentimes, during the time doing talk radio, well, Trump was president, people would say, oh, the Lincoln Project let out this press release and say this and say that. And I was frustrated with them long before I knew how despicable of an outfit they are. So they've been imploding on themselves, if you haven't caught this. And, I mean, they're trying to fight this scandal. All right. First of all, their president has been caught in a sex scandal, but it goes beyond just the sex scandal, because there's minors involved. So he's put the moves on many of the men associated with the Lincoln Project, were young guys who wanted to get into politics or break into the scene, the political scene, whether it's fundraising or PACs, or just working for Congress, members of Congress, or what have you. And he would use his position to make promises of either working at the Lincoln Project or getting them jobs for sex. He was inappropriate in his texts and communications, but some of these men were under 18 years of age. One as young as, I think, 14. John Weaver is a gross person. So we have this issue of the Lincoln Project, and Jennifer Horn, she helped co-found the anti-Trump project here. She resigned amid the reports that the other co-founder, who sent those unsolicited, inappropriate messages to young men, her quote, right, upon careful consideration, maybe you should have done some consideration about even the whole concept of this organization beforehand, but put a pin in that. Upon careful consideration, I have terminated my relationship with the Lincoln Project effective immediately. And that was in a New York Times interview she did. And she blasted her colleagues at the organization, suggesting that some in the group had known about the sexual harassment allegations against co-founder John Weaver long before they were made public by the New York Times. So the Times did this big expose at the end of January. And Horn was former chairwoman of the New Hampshire Republican Party. She also accused those colleagues of refusing to properly address the allegations against Weaver after the article came out from the Times. She said she was demeaned and lied to. And it's funny that the AP released this story, but see, the thing here you got to look at, folks, is this is, again, one of those well-known secrets in the Beltway. So now we're finding out, as people talk and things come to the surface, as they always do, that in fact this was known. Right? This was known. John Weaver's actions and behavior was something that was known but not talked about. And then the media knew what was going on, therefore allowing young men to fall victim to this guy. Because it's not like you can justify and say, look, he's making a move on a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old. They know what's what. They can tell when a guy is coming on to them. Or, you know, if they're too stupid to fall for promises for a little date action or something. No, they knew that this guy was doing this to young men, teenagers, who you can't make the assumption that they know the way of the world and that they're worldly about this stuff. That's why we protect our minors. That's why they're not legally allowed to enter a contract till they're 18. Their brains are still mush, guys. But the media knew what this organization was made up of. And I haven't even got to the financial improprieties yet. But because they were an anti-Trump organization, a Republican anti-Trump organization, they served a purpose for the media. The enemy of my enemy is my friend type of thing. If they're going to be attacking Trump and trying to hurt Trump, then we're going to leave them alone and let them do their thing at the expense of these young men because they're anti-Trump. That's how they work. So they weren't going to say anything back when they knew, when President Trump was still President Trump, back when it was before the 2020 election, because they didn't want to blow a Republican anti-Trump organization out of the water or discredit them before the election. That's one of the stories that I hear that you can't let go by, folks. The drive-by media, right, coined by Rush Limbaugh. And what does the drive-by media mean? It means they rush into a scene, they stir it up into a frenzy, they make stuff up, they don't have their facts straight, and they move on down the road to the next one, leaving a debacle behind them for everyone else to clean up. And when the real facts unfold in time, they're nowhere to be found. I mean, we can look at examples of that. from the student with the mega cap on that CNN paid dearly for their actions, good for him, to the collusion, hoax, and everything else, right? We know what the drive-by media is. But they weren't going to touch this because God forbid that could have helped Donald Trump in some form. They couldn't risk that. So they sat on it until after the election. And the thing about this is, and I suspect, I wonder if they thought that they were going to bring in as much money as they did, right? Nearly $90 million. Think about that. Just under. Almost $90 million. Did they think, hey, let's put together this 503C, we'll be anti-Trump, we'll try to hurt him, we'll call him out, we'll, and if they stayed to the actions of an organization, political organizations that's just supposed to do that, that's politics, it's fair game to do that. But I wonder if they thought for a moment that they were going to raise that much money. I think they were probably surprised that much came in. But $90 million was raised from Trump haters and never Trumpers across the country. But the interesting thing is, there's a money scandal on top of this sex scandal, or under. I don't know who's top or bottom in this one, but under this money scandal. Because guess what? Out of that $90 million, like 27 of it can actually be traced to ads in campaigns that can actually be found to be used for the purpose of the organization. That leaves a lot of tens of millions of dollars that got redirected into their pockets. And they don't look at it. It's pretty well known how you do this stuff, right? In the Beltway, like you create the foundations and the other organizations, and you pay this or this company for their media research and their voter research, and they belong to members of the board, and this is how they pay themselves, and they pay the salaries to themselves from the money that gets paid to these other companies, and that's exactly what's going on, which all can be figured out with forensic accounting. But millions of dollars have gone off. And then the races that they targeted, and this is what they did, is they targeted Senate races who they wanted to get anti-Trump Republicans and some Democrats elected to the Senate. Anybody that would be voting against Trump, especially if he was to have his second term. But they weren't even successful there, folks. Right? They lost the majority of the seats that they went after. And by the way, one of the other members of this board was John Conway. John Conway was part of the Lincoln Project. Now that's Kellyanne Conway's husband. Now we know Kellyanne, who was an advisor to the President Trump, who was extremely intelligent woman. I mean, she would go out in front of the White House and handle the press, and time after time, she destroyed them. Well, when she stepped down from the White House, and you might recall this, when Kellyanne Conway, because of course the media would like to make it sound like when people left the employ of the president to the White House, that they were disgusted and they were running away from Donald Trump. Meanwhile, people come and go in administrations all the time, but because they weren't Trump when they were president, nobody reads into it. It had nothing to do with that. Her and the president still have a fantastic relationship, but that's all fine. It's just that they decided together at the same time they needed to pay attention to their kids and spend some more time. So they both stepped down. She's an attorney, although she didn't practice as an attorney, but she has a law degree, and she was working for Trump. He's an attorney. He was with this Lincoln Project, and they both stepped down at the same time to spend time with their kids, just as a side note. The organization also encouraged anyone bound by their non-disclosure agreements, by the way, to go forward, because they'll be released from the NDAs. So, again, when Trump has used an NDA, the media said he paid them off. But when friends of the media pay somebody off, they're just perfectly legal NDAs are used, non-disclosure agreements. So the Lincoln Project had several of these in place because during this entire time that they're cooking the books and John Weaver's trying to cook other stuff, they've had to enter NDAs, meaning money got exchanged. On the street, guys, we call that hush money. So hush money would be paid and NDAs are signed. And the NDA says, we're going to give you this money so you don't sue us, you don't make it public, you don't talk about this despicable thing that we tried to do to you. And if you ever do talk about it, then you're going to pay all the money back, and we can actually sue you for the breach of the contract, which means not just the money that we paid you, but you could have to be paying us more money than you're going to make. And that's how we guarantee silence from people. So they've said now, look, what we're going to do is we'll release people from the NDAs. So if you have something that you need to add to that John Weaver did to you, or suggested to do to you, or tried to do to you, men, women, doesn't matter who you are, we're going to relax the NDA so you can come forward and talk about this. The revelations about Weaver first became public through a Twitter post in January from a political consultant named Ryan Gerdersky. Then followed by several reports piling on, right? New allegations kept coming out involved in Weaver contacting young men, as again, some of them teenagers, including people under 18, who could potentially work for the Lincoln Project. And he would send them messages, and you know what they're going to write, suggestive, sexually explicit messages. And he would tell them, spoil you when we see each other. And I'm quoting these guys. Help you in other times. Give advice, counsel, and help you with the bills. And you help me sexually. So this is what was going on at the Lincoln Project. The media knows this was going on, but they're not going to blow it out of the water. Because as long as they're doing what the media and the left considered anything to hurt Trump, because remember, Trump is evil and must be destroyed. And if we have to put up with a little embezzlement, money laundering, sexual assault, harassment, and rape to hurt Trump, so be it. All justified when you're as evil as Trump is. So the Lincoln Project, folks, is a joke. I believe their purpose for existing in the first place is just, that's disgusting in itself. But then you put these people together, and even in those people who may not have been sexually harassing these young men, and maybe even somebody in there who didn't partake in skimming money off the top, creating a company for the Lincoln Project to pay a way of distributing their ill-gotten gains, and I consider them ill-gotten gains. they knew about it. And if you know about it and you stay part of that organization, and if you don't call them out on it, then that's part of it, right? We recognize that in legal terms, conspiracy. We understand that knowing about a crime or the wrongdoings that are happening and saying nothing, doing nothing, not even the minimum of resigning from the organization, distancing yourself, which is the very least you could do. If you stayed there, knowing about the money laundering in the sexual escapades of the Weaver, then you're wrong too. You're guilty too. And that goes for the entire media that allowed this, knowing this, right? They sat on these details, they sat on the story because they did not want to get rid of, first, an anti-Trump organization, but B, to give Trump the ability to go, look at that, folks. What I tell you, right? No way were they going to allow Trump to have any even appearance of a victory in this. You know Susan Collins, her Senate race, right? It was considered a tough one. Do you know they spent millions of dollars just in her race alone to try to defeat Susan Collins, and she won? So on top of everything else, they were so ineffective as a political committee. Speaking of which, by the way, we didn't hear much from President Trump since he's left office, obviously. I mean, mostly because he's been deplatformed, right? His accounts have been taken away, which, again, that's a whole nother show, a whole nother discussion, folks. But the death of Rush Limbaugh has brought him kind of back out to public life, only because, you know, everybody from Hannity to Mark Levine to Fox News has been, you know, talking about and covering Rush Limbaugh's death and invited President Trump to speak on it. So we've heard him, and he's been there to speak on Rush. So they didn't get into a lot of other stuff. So we haven't really heard from him or what his plans are. But it did come out during the time over this weekend and last few days that he will be at CPAC. And CPAC, and I don't want to insult you folks, because I know probably 99.8%, as Rush would say, know what I'm talking. You know what CPAC is, the Conservative Public Action Committee that takes place this time every year. But Trump will be talking about the future of the Republican Party and lessons learned in the 2020 election during his upcoming speech at CPAC, Conservative Political Action Conference. He'll be talking, I think, he'll be the keynote speaker at the conference. He's scheduled to speak on the last day of the conference, which is February 28th. Trump's attendance will be the first public appearance since he left office. So we will find out at CPAC what he thinks, what he plans to do, how is he going to, because there's no question, folks, he still wields a lot of influence and power. Those 75 million people who voted for him, most of you listening to me right now are probably in that group, aren't just giving up or going away. So it said Trump intends to share his views on the growing GOP support for his America First agenda, as well as all about the Republican Party could do to yield some wins in 2022 and 2024. The 22 election is going to be very important because if the election election process isn't redone, Republicans should gain a lot in the House. But we need to take a break here at 31 minutes past the hour. All right, that does the first half of the second hour of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Stick with us here at AM 830 WCRN. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. All right, folks, welcome back. Welcome back to the fourth and final segment of the Joe Mangiacotti Show, Sunday edition here on AM 830 WCRN, our affiliates, live streaming on the TuneIn app, and we are live streaming on our Facebook page. Go to Joe Mangiacotti Show at Facebook, and you'll see. But there's a camera here in the non-disclosed location here, but the audio is streaming there. So you have multiple ways of listening to the show. You can also reach us at 508-871-7000, 508-871-7000. Lines are open and available. So give us a call and join the conversation. We also have a text line, 617-297-8388. 617-297-8388. And text us in real time. And also you can actually email text Joe on the radio at gmail.com. It appears on the same screen. So you have a couple of ways to communicate with the show. But lines have been open and available. Not a lot of calls today, interesting. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, there was. I should look at it from time to time. My apologies there. 508-871-7000. Let me go to the phones. Ken, you've been waiting a few minutes. Sorry about that. Good morning, sir. How are you? I am well. Thanks for asking. I'm getting feedback there a little bit, so I don't know if that's okay there, Cam, or not, if there's something we can do about that. Go ahead, Ken. Yeah, I can hear you. I was letting him know in control that I was getting a feedback of my own coming back to me, that's all. But go ahead, I can hear you fine, Ken. Yeah. I got sent a song, the mRNA, right? You know, that's the code for the virus. And somebody did a parody to this because there's actually, I'm not sure what it's, let's see if I can pull this up. I'm going to play here we go. Tell me if you can hear this, okay. All right, so the point is that this it goes on, and it's a parody, right, or based on the song saying that we're pretty stupid for wearing the masks, and that they're controlling us, Ken, right? So this is what they're saying, that it's altering the DNA, all those things that are in there. But it's I posted it on my Facebook page. It's just a cute, funny parody song, folks. But there's always a little truth, right? A sliver of truth in that stuff. or jeans. I just, but also, Ken, right? We got to ask the question: if we're getting vaccinated, so if we get vaccinated, does that mean we can stop wearing the masks? Does it mean we can be more, closer than 6 feet? The answer is no. Being vaccinated doesn't mean that they're saying, okay, you don't have to wear a mask anymore, you don't have to social distance anymore. In other words, what's going to change? And from what I'm understanding, the answer to the question, Ken, is well, nothing. You still got to do all these things. Not only are we saying that you need to continue to mask, now we're suggesting 2 masks and 3 masks in some cases. So what's the vaccination doing, and if it doesn't allow us to change any life, and how much of this is just totally about controlling? And then the other part of this, Ken, and I wanted to let me ask you, what's your take on Bill Gates in this whole situation? Because we've got Bill Gates coming on the scene, and this guy, he's not a scientist, he's not a doctor, he's not a virologist. He's a guy, and he didn't even. I mean, he's made billions of dollars, right? He's worth how many hundreds of billions of dollars, and he tells us that one of the best investments he's ever made is into vaccines, 20 times the return. Is a $200 billion return on his investments. He started the Gates Foundation, and now he's controlling all kinds of vaccinations and distributions from the laboratories to the fields of Asia. He owns he himself, right, owns the most amount of farmland, 250 million acres of farmland. And now he's out telling us that we have to make these huge sacrifices to move forward in the evolution. That we have to, all major industrial nations have to stop eating beef, that we have to eat those fungi replacement, that he's invested in those companies. He's invested in the vaccines, and he's going to tell the world how we need to live. He also believes that the 8.6 billion people on the planet is overpopulated, and that we have to bring the population down. Are you starting to get concerned with Bill Gates yet? Yeah. Well, I mean that's part of the accusation. Okay. No, absolutely right. We've got to give him credit for his philanthropic endeavors. Now, what's interesting is, let's go back to the Clinton era years, right? He had a very bad image at the time because he was being sued by the DOJ for the antitrust issues, the licensing, and a lot of people, I think, might not realize Bill Gates, like, he didn't write the operating system. He actually bought the operating system from a Seattle-based software company, modified it, but he was smart enough, and he came from a privileged life, and his father was an attorney, and he understood this stuff in a political mover and shaker, is he did the very intelligent thing of actually licensing, patenting it, licensing it to IBM after he bought it and then patent it and then sold it or licensed it to IBM. That's where the operating system Windows came from. He didn't actually invent it and write it. So he was getting a lot of bad PR in the 90s, and he was being sued. So he went out and with his wife, right, and they started what's her name, Marilyn or something? The Bill of Marilyn, or I forget her name. Melinda, thank you. Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation. Melinda, yeah. And so, he put $100 million up into this foundation, went on a complete image PR program and changed his image. And then, yeah, they have done incredible humanitarian things around the planet. At the same time, investing in vaccines, owning the patents for many of these, and then telling us how we need to live. You know, he's talking about carbon footprints. He's the biggest offender, and he just invested in the largest private jet acquisition in the history of jets. And he says to us, yes, I have a big footprint, but I offset it. Now, I don't even know if that's actually possible. That's, to me, that's a scam, right? The carbon credits can, oh yeah, okay, you know, if I drive an expedition, I can drive that expedition because I bought some carbon credits from somebody else, or I pay a little more money. So what is he doing? He's saying the world's going to be based on the haves and have-nots. As long as you're rich enough, you can do whatever you want. You have all the freedoms in the world, and the poorer you are, the less freedom you have. That's the path we're going down in a Bill Gates world, or a Green New Deal world of carbon credits. John Kerry's in the same boat. He justifies flying his private jets across the ocean to attend, or receive actually, a climate fighting award. There's no justification for that. None whatsoever. Maybe if you flew commercial airliner, the plane was going anyway, that's one thing. But your private plane, and now he has a private plane in security on the taxpayer. It doesn't add up, Ken, across the board. And Bill Gates, it doesn't add up. But what is his end game? What is he trying to tell us? And he's not. And who is he to tell us these things? He's not a doctor. He's not a rancher. He's none of these things. He's just a guy that has figured out how to make a lot of money, which is a talent in itself. Absolutely, it's a great talent. But don't tell me what I'm allowed to eat, what I'm allowed to drive, if I can fly. In his world, the haves would allow you to fly or not. You'd have to justify why you need to fly somewhere. So your travel would be restricted based on your carbon credits, your ability to offset them. You know what I'm saying? It's like buying a pardon from the Pope for your sins. Can it really be done? Does it really work that way? Yeah, you think? Yeah, absolutely. Well, there you go. I mean, you know, I was going to actually talk about the Cuomo situation going on, and how ridiculous it is there, and his direct actions, and the you know, an outside independent study says that his March 25th directive is directly responsible for at least 1,000 deaths, and then you've got the left and Biden looking at Governor DeSantis in Florida, and actually Biden talking about restricting travel to Florida within the United States because he doesn't like the fact that Florida is doing well, right? They have a lower per capita death than New York does. They don't have the infection rate. They have less, like right across the board, they're doing better. And it's a heck of a lot freer there. And so, what's the answer to that? It's not to study, what did they do and how can we duplicate this in other states and get the economy rolling again and kids back in school? No. It's to punish the state and then tell Americans, you can't you can't travel to this state because we don't like them. They belong to the other party, and they're not following in with our ridiculous orders. You heard about that, Ken, right? Oh, what about, well, yeah, when they got, oh my God, so many, I think that, look, what was it, what did Lenin and what did they say, right? I mean, communism isn't going to come to America in a big bang, it's just going to come in quietly, overnight. It's just going to seep in, and that's what's going on. Look at Tom Brady, they got the video, the footage of him. And I consider that he's in his home, right? The first time Super Bowl was played in a team's home stadium. So that's his home, and he's walking down the hallway thing, the path without the mask on. They flipped over that. First of all, there was actually nobody really close to him, but it was just, that's what they focused on in that particular situation. The guy was among his teammates in his home, and that's what they were worried about. You're right, the CNN reporter there, right, judging and making all these comments about it. But you know what? And this, and by the way, I want to do the correction. Yesterday I couldn't find it when it came up, but the number is 50% of the people who have moved out, this is according to last year's stats, who moved out of Massachusetts last year, 50% relocated to Florida. So this state has had a mass exit under Republican Governor Charlie Baker to Republican Governor Rick DeSantis in Florida. 50% of the people leaving the state, or maybe one might even say running away from Massachusetts as fast as they can, ended up in the Sunshine State. So, look, again, we're here to point out when things don't make sense and they don't add up, and what is the real story and the story behind the story. And so many things right now are just so ridiculous. You have to ask yourself, I go back to what I was talking about with the teachers union thing and the embezzlement, right? Go research that, Ken. I said it to everybody earlier. You will get to a point, trust me, I've done this. You're going to be doing this. You're going to get down that rabbit hole doing this, and you're going to go at some point, how do we not know this? How is this not bigger news? How is so much fraud and theft happening with teachers' unions and school systems scattered throughout the entire country, and it's not on the news? I mean, the stories are there, but it's not in the news. Understand the difference? Stories are there, but it's not being talked about. And why? You will get to a point, folks, if you do what I suggested you do, you will go, how do we not know all of this as a serious problem with education money in teachers' unions going on right now? And I'm telling you, you'll find stories in all the major cities of embezzlement and teachers' union officials and superintendents and principals serving time, being sentenced under house arrest for misappropriation of funds and stealing funds, and it's like an epidemic that nobody's even talking about. Oh, this is a whole nother issue, right? Because, go ahead, what did they teach them? Oh my God. Okay. Yes, I did. I was going to get to this. And unfortunately, folks, right? Because I mean, I only have 2 hours in a day. but they have the 8 white identities. They actually gave, and this is what Ken's talking about. And Ken, tell me if this isn't what you're meaning, but they sent homework home to the parents. Principals asked parents to rank their whiteness. Yeah, you don't adjust the radio. You heard what I said. Parents were to adjust their whiteness. And this whiteness, by the way, it goes from white voyeurism to white privilege to white benefit, white confessional, white critical, and white traitor, and white abolishment. I mean, first of all, what are you thinking? And what does this even mean? And can you imagine being a parent? You have 1 or 2 kids in the school system, and they bring this home to you, and you have to fill this out, send it back to how guilty you feel about being born white. Because, you know, you had complete control over how you're born and what you're born as, Ken. Right? We all know we decide that before we're born. We decide if we're white, brown, black, yellow, pink, green. We decide, you know, how much money we're going to be born into. We're going to decide who our parents are and our ancestors are. We have total control over all that. This is what's going on in the school systems. And what this pandemic has done, Ken, it has let parents get a peek into what goes on. Remember back in the beginning when we went to remote learning? All of a sudden the schools issued rules. The parents weren't allowed in the room. The parents weren't allowed to watch what was going on the classroom wall thing, right? They had to stay up out of the room. Teachers didn't want parents to get a glimpse as to what they're pumping into their mushy brains of their children. That became an issue, Ken. Oh yeah, and it's being taught. It's being taught. You're right. Yeah. Hey Ken, we're up against it. We got less than a minute to go for the end of the show. I'm sorry about that. Thank you for the call. Thank you for listening. Of course, you've been a long time listener, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Ken. All right, folks, that's going to actually wrap up the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Actually, wraps up the whole weekend. And that will do it for me this weekend. But, of course, I'll be back Thursday at 11 a.m. on Making Money Last with Jerry Doherty for Political Thursday, as we do every Thursday, where your finances and politics intersect. And we try to take a look at it there and again, shuffle through a lot of this going on. Please check us out on TJMShow.com. Follow us on my social media platforms at JoeMShow. Check out my Facebook page. We're going to be increasing the number of the posts that I do in some videos. Hey, enjoy the rest of your weekend, folks. I'm Joe Mangiacotti.